Hello class and welcome to week 14 and a recap of chapter 12. In this chapter we've looked at the two major justifications of punishment and corrections. Here we discovered that the rationale for both comes from the previously discussed social contract. You learned that the two major justifications for punishment and prevention are retribution and treatment. The retributive rationale assumes that punishment is an end in itself and is probably more consistent with a view of the criminal as a rational person, and therefore using punishment as a means to alter behavior is a rational solution to crime. The three common justifications or rationales for punishment can be summed under a general heading of prevention. Prevention assumes that something should be done to the offender to prevent future criminal activity. In this chapter, three possible methods of prevention were discussed. First, deterrence, both specific and general, with specific deterring the individual, while general deterring all others. Second, incapacitation. This prevents further crime by any individual. And lastly, treatment, which implies acceptance rather than rejection, or support rather than hatred. Each of these goals is based on certain assumptions that must be considered in addition to the relevant moral questions. For instance, it's a factual question as to whether people can be deterred from crime, but it is a moral question as to what we do to an individual to ensure actual deterrence from future criminal activity. What we do to offenders is influenced by our views on things such as 1. Free will and determinism, 2. The capacity for individual change, and 3. The basic nature of humankind. Punishment has always been used against those who hurt others in our society and thus be considered consistent with natural law. However, the limits of punishment have been subject to the laws and the mores of each historical era. Today, our punishments primarily consist of imprisonment or some form of restricted liberty, such as probation or parole. The death penalty continues to be used, however, the controversy surrounding it continues. We have seen a trend where the state delegates its authority to punish to private institutions. Now, serious questions have been raised over this practice. Some argue that the profit motive is simply incompatible with the awesome power of the state to deprive individuals of liberty in the name of punishment. The various rationales for punishment just described are well established and can be found in corrections textbooks. The ethical systems that were introduced in Chapter 2 are discussed less commonly in these correction textbooks, but they form the underlying philosophical rationale for the goals or missions of retribution and prevention, including deterrence, incapacitation, and treatment. The principle of utilitarianism is often used to support the last three rationales of punishment. According to utilitarianism, punishing or treating the individual offender benefits society, and this benefit outweighs the negative effect on the individual offender. It is therefore teleological because the morality of the punishment is determined by the consequences derived, hopefully reduce crime. Jerry Bentham was the major proponent of utilitarian theory of punishment and established basic guidelines for its use. Contrast the utilitarian view toward punishment with Kant's views. Ethical formalism clearly supports a retributive view of punishment. It is deontological because it is concerned not with the consequences of the punishment or treatment, only its inherent morality. Now, the ethics of care would probably not support punishment unless it was essential to help the offender become a better person. This ethical system defines good as that which meets everyone's needs, victims and offenders alike. It forms the rationale for punishments that one might find under restorative justice programs, which we will address and discuss more fully in the next chapter. For now, thanks for listening, and please continue with this week's assignments.